The Galactic Empire considered itself the pinnacle of civilization, its fleets stretching across the void, its technology centuries ahead of any lesser species. Among those deemed unworthy, humans ranked especially low, brutish, unsophisticated, primitive. When an Imperial patrol captured a lone human girl during a skirmish on the Outer Rim, they did not see a soldier or a threat. They saw curiosity. She was brought aboard the command cruiser Varkaloth, where officers of the Imperial Intelligence Bureau studied her with mild amusement. The interrogations began immediately. Questions were asked in clipped, measured tones. What was her mission? Where were her commanders? How had she managed to infiltrate an Imperial-controlled sector? She did not speak. Days passed and frustration grew. Interrogators varied their methods, psychological manipulation, threats, even force, but the result remained unchanged. She neither pleaded nor resisted. She simply existed within the confines of her cell, an unreadable presence behind the observation glass. The lead interrogator, Prefect Durrell, was particularly annoyed. Perhaps she is simple-minded, he mused to his second-in-command. The humans rely on their brute strength. There is no subtlety, no ingenuity in them. If she will not speak, she is of no use. Across the void on a barren world marked only by its designation, Outpost Theta 9, Major Jackson Cole received a transmission. The message was short. No names, no context, just a series of numbers. He read them once, then again. His jaw tightened. He turned to his squad, a collection of hardened men, each bearing the scars of survival in wars where the odds had never been in their favor. Code Black, Cole announced. The reaction was immediate. A silent acknowledgement passed through the room. Weapons were checked, armor secured. The meaning of the code was unambiguous. Someone had been taken. Someone important. The death squad did not have official records. They did not exist in any database, human or otherwise. They were ghosts, deployed only when conventional forces were insufficient. And their mission had just been defined. Cole gathered his men, Reynolds, the sniper, whose patience was matched only by his precision, Vickers, the demolitions expert, always carrying more explosives than necessary, Carter, a former Marine, the squad's relentless close combat specialist, and Hughes, their communications and cyber warfare expert, capable of turning enemy technology against them. The team operated with a singular understanding. They did not need to ask who had been taken. They already knew. The Phantom. The name was not spoken aloud, not because of secrecy, but because it was unnecessary. For years, she had been the unseen strategist behind their most dangerous operations. Her voice, transmitted through encrypted channels, had guided them through impossible odds. Her plans had turned desperate situations into victories. And now, she was in enemy hands. The death squad did not leave their own behind. Cole's voice was calm as he outlined the mission. They'll be overconfident, he said. They always are. We use that. Hughes had already begun his work, slicing into Imperial comms. They don't even know who they have, he muttered. They think she's some random operative. No high-security transfer, no off-the-books black site. Just a standard cruiser. Arrogant bastards. Cole nodded. Then let's make them regret it. The plan took shape with ruthless efficiency. The squad did not have the luxury of direct confrontation. They would strike from the shadows, exploiting every flaw, every oversight. They would use what they had, not what they wished for. Vickers grinned as he examined the schematics Hughes pulled from the Imperial database. They built their defenses for people who think like them. Straight lines, predictable pathways. Not built for us. Reynolds adjusted the scope on his rifle. They think we'll fight on their terms. They're wrong. Cole looked at them all, a brief moment of acknowledgement passing between men who had fought and bled together. Then he gave the only order necessary. Gear up. The squad moved with practiced precision. They did not discuss what would happen if they failed. Failure was not an option. Aboard the Varkaloth, Prefect Durrell made his way to the holding cells, irritation simmering beneath his composed exterior. The girl had not spoken. Not once. He entered the observation room, looking through the reinforced glass. She sat motionless, her posture relaxed, her gaze unreadable. Perhaps we overestimated her importance, his aide ventured. A soldier without a voice is of no use. Durrell considered this. Or perhaps she does not speak, because she does not need to. Perhaps she knows something we do not. The thought was dismissed almost as quickly as it had formed. What could a human girl possibly know that would make any difference? The alarms began moments later. The Varkaloth drifted through the void, its gunmetal hull reflecting the dim glow of a nearby star. Aboard, the Imperial officers moved with practiced arrogance, their control of the sector undisputed. No one had ever breached one of their command cruisers. No one had ever dared. That belief shattered the moment the alarms blared. Prefect Durrell turned sharply, his expression darkening as red emergency lights pulsed along the corridors. The crisp voice of a security officer crackled over the comms. Unauthorized entry detected, intruders aboard. Durrell's lips curled in disdain. Pirates, perhaps? A rogue faction foolish enough to test the might of the Empire? He would deal with them swiftly. Seal all decks. Deploy suppression teams. Annihilate them. But even as he gave the order, something gnawed at him. There had been no fleet engagement. No docking alerts. No trace of an external breach. How had they gotten in? Inside the lower decks, Major Jackson Cole moved like a predator through shadowed corridors, his weapon steady, his breathing even. Around him, his men advanced with silent efficiency. Reynolds kept his rifle poised, eyes sweeping every blind spot. Vickers crouched by a terminal, quickly rigging a fail-safe charge, insurance against pursuit. Carter and Hughes took point, their movements practiced methodical. They had infiltrated undetected, slipping past automated defenses using a tactic the Empire had dismissed as outdated, hijacking an unguarded maintenance drone and riding its access route into the ship's ventilation infrastructure. The Imperials, in their obsession with technological superiority, had never considered the possibility. Cole tapped his comm once. A soft click responded. The Phantom was still alive. He motioned forward. The mission had begun. The squad moved in formation, bypassing security checkpoints through sheer ingenuity. Hughes had scrambled internal sensors before entry, feeding false readings to Imperial monitoring systems. They weren't invisible, but to the enemy, they appeared as scattered, meaningless signals, a flaw in the ship's algorithms. Durrell paced inside the control chamber, scrutinizing the distorted readouts. Something wasn't right. The intruders weren't triggering direct confrontations. They weren't forcing their way in. They were bypassing the ship's defenses as if they knew exactly where to strike. His fingers tightened around the command console. Who are they? No answer came. Deep in the maintenance levels, Carter signaled stop. Ahead, a squad of Imperial guards patrolled, their rifles held loosely, unaware of the danger stalking them. Reynolds exhaled, adjusted his aim, and squeezed the trigger. A single suppressed shot. The lead guard dropped. Before the others could react, the squad moved. Carter lunged, a combat knife flashing, while Vickers stepped around, weapon barking twice. The last guard managed a shout before Hughes jammed a signal disruptor, cutting off all communications in the sector. The bodies fell lifeless before alarms could sound. Cole checked his chrono. Time was running short. They weren't here for a war, they were here for extraction. Vickers knelt by a security panel, setting a small charge. We won't have long once we blow this. They'll reroute controls manually. Cole nodded. Then we move fast. The explosion was contained but effective. Emergency protocols triggered, locking Imperial personnel out of their own systems. For the next 7 minutes, the Death Squad controlled this section of the ship. Durrell's eyes narrowed as his screen flickered. The infiltrators had severed command overrides. Impossible, he muttered. The Imperials prided themselves on their technology. Their enemies relied on brute force, but these men, whoever they were, fought with precision, adapting faster than the Empire could compensate. They had turned the ship's own systems against them, a level of warfare the Imperials had never encountered. Durrell slammed his fist against the console. Deploy the suppression teams now. The order came too late. Cole's squad had already reached their target. The Phantom's cell loomed before them, a thick door reinforced with alloys resistant to plasma fire. but not resistant to ingenuity. Hughes bypassed the lock in seconds. The door hissed open, revealing a solitary figure. The girl did not flinch at the sight of them, nor did she move. Cole gave a single nod. "We're leaving." She stepped forward without hesitation. The squad turned to retreat, but the enemy had adapted. Suppression teams flooded the corridors, armored and armed with energy rifles. Cole gestured. No words were needed. Reynolds dropped into position, rifle up. Carter moved to cover the right flank. Vickers primed the last of his charges. The Imperials opened fire. Plasma bolts seared the air, striking walls, leaving molten craters. The Death Squad did not break formation. They fought as they always had, ruthless, efficient, unpredictable. Reynolds took out the lead officer. Carter slammed an enemy soldier into the bulkhead, breaking him before stealing his rifle. Hughes triggered an EMP, sending shockwaves through Imperial armor systems, disabling shields in an instant. The Imperials faltered. The squad did not. Through the chaos, the Phantom moved untouched, her presence a ghostly shadow among the storm of battle. Durrell watched from the monitors, his expression unreadable. The girl was no mere prisoner. She was something else, something dangerous. And the men who had come for her, warriors who fought without hesitation, who adapted faster than his forces could react, they were a threat beyond anything the Empire had prepared for. For the first time, Durrell felt something unfamiliar coil in his chest. Doubt. The battle raged, but the Death Squad was already securing their exit. Their mission was never to hold ground. It was to extract. To remind the Empire that they were never beyond reach. The alarms echoed across the ship, but Cole's voice cut through them, steady as ever. Move out. The extraction plan had been simple. Get in, get her, get out. But simplicity rarely survived contact with reality. The Varkaloth had turned into a battlefield, and now the squad had to carve a path through a warship teeming with hostiles. Cole moved with mechanical efficiency, his mind processing routes and contingencies as weapons fire flashed through the corridors. Carter was already ahead, clearing angles, his stolen rifle spitting bursts of plasma at anything moving in Imperial armor. Reynolds covered the rear, his precision shots cutting down officers before they could sound fresh alarms. Hughes stayed close to the Phantom, his fingers dancing over a portable interface, keeping their digital footprint hidden as long as the Empire's systems allowed. Vickers detonated another controlled charge at a bulkhead junction, forcing the Imperials to reroute their forces. The ship was a maze, but the Death Squad knew how to weaponize confined spaces. The Phantom never hesitated. She moved with quiet assurance, keeping pace without wasted motion. She had spent years guiding them from the other side of the comms. Now, she was in the thick of it. But she was not out of place. Durrell had adapted. The moment he realized brute force would not break the enemy, he shifted tactics. He studied their movement patterns, recognized their strategy. They weren't fighting to win a battle, they were fighting to escape. That meant choke points. That meant predictable access routes. He made his move. The squad's path suddenly locked down. Blast doors slammed shut along the corridors. Automated turrets deployed, cutting off secondary routes. Security fields engaged, turning the shortest path to the hangar into a gauntlet of suppression teams. Hughes snarled, "They're boxing us in." Cole checked the layout on Hughes's device, his mind already dissecting the problem. The Empire thought in straight lines, contain, isolate, overwhelm. But the squad didn't operate in lines. They moved in angles, in disruptions. "We take the vent system," Cole decided. Carter kicked open a maintenance panel, leading the way. Vickers slid in next, planting a trip mine at the entrance as a farewell gift. Hughes uploaded a new set of false readings into the Imperial network, buying them precious seconds before the enemy realized their mistake. The tunnels were tight, but they gave the squad exactly what they needed, an unpredictable route. They crawled through the ship's underbelly, bypassing checkpoints, emerging into a service corridor just beyond the suppression team's perimeter. Durrell's frustration grew. The enemy wasn't just surviving, they were outmaneuvering him inside his own ship. He had underestimated them. They fought like ghosts, striking and vanishing before his forces could adapt. But they had not yet won. Dural ordered a full ship-wide lockdown. Every deck was sealed. The Varkaloth itself became a weapon, forcing the humans into a shrinking space with no escape. Even if they reached the hangar, they would find every fighter, every gunship disabled, every launch bay shut. Cole saw the hangar doors flash red on the schematic. He exhaled. They shut down the ships, Hughes confirmed. Reynolds chambered another round. Then we take theirs. The Phantom finally spoke. Her voice, calm and steady, carried the weight of command. Use the Varkaloth against them. They understood immediately. The Empire had built its warships for dominance, not defense. The Varkaloth was a fortress, but wasn't designed to counter internal threats of this scale. Hughes accessed an auxiliary control station, fingers flying. If I can override one of the auxiliary fighter bays, I can trick the system into recognizing an emergency launch. Cole nodded. Do it. Vickers prepped a final set of charges. We'll need a distraction. Carter grinned. I'll give M1. The plan unfolded in seconds. Hughes rewrote the ship's safety protocols, convincing it that an explosion had breached the outer hull. In response, the automated security systems rerouted emergency power, forcing open an auxiliary launch bay. The Death Squad sprinted through the chaos, Imperial forces scrambling to respond to an enemy they still didn't fully understand. The Phantom walked among them, silent, watching as the machine of war turned against its own masters. Dural saw the deception too late. He watched in growing disbelief as a single gunship powered up inside the hangar. Cole gave the order. Move. The squad piled in, engines roaring to life. Imperial forces stormed the hangar, but it was too late. The Phantom took one last glance at the Empire soldiers before stepping onto the ship. The Death Squad had done the impossible, and the Empire would never forget it. The gunship tore through the void, its engines burning hot as it broke free from the Varkaloth's gravity well. Behind them, the Imperial warship loomed, a wounded beast desperate to strike down its prey. Alarms blared across the comms as turrets locked onto their trajectory. A dozen interceptors scrambled from secondary launch bays, forming a lethal perimeter. The escape was far from over. Hughes pushed the thrusters to their limits, fingers flying over controls as he rerouted auxiliary power. Shields at 40%. We won't survive a direct hit. Reynolds secured the rear gunner position, calibrating the targeting system with ruthless efficiency. We won't need to if I drop those fighters first. Carter slid into the co-pilot seat, adjusting the NAV systems. We still don't have a clear jump route. If we don't punch through their line, we're done. Cole stood behind them, eyes fixed on the sensor display. The Imperials weren't just chasing them, they were adapting. A blockade was forming ahead, cutting off every conventional exit. The Empire wasn't making the same mistake twice. The Phantom watched it all in silence. Dural leaned forward on his command deck, hands tightening into fists. His fleet had suffered an embarrassment beyond measure, but the hunt was not over. His voice carried through the warship like cold steel. Focus all fire on their engines. Cripple them. They will not escape. The Varkaloth's main batteries opened fire, unleashing a storm of plasma meant to overwhelm, not destroy. They wanted the ship disabled, its passengers alive. Cole saw the pattern instantly. They need us breathing. Reynolds scoffed. That's their mistake. Carter swerved the gunship into a brutal dive, skimming along the edge of the nearest Imperial destroyer. Turrets hesitated, afraid of hitting friendly targets. Reynolds took advantage, unleashing a barrage of fire. The first interceptor exploded into scrap. The blockade wavered, but not for long. Hughes shook his head. We won't last in a dogfight. We need another way out. The Phantom moved to the console, studying the fleet's formation. Her fingers traced the energy grid displayed before her. Use their own weapons against them. She pointed to a specific point on the screen, an active shield conduit aboard a nearby Imperial dreadnought. The Phantom didn't need to explain. Cole understood instantly. They won't fire on their own flagship. Carter grinned. I like it. The plan was insane, but insanity had always been the Death Squad's greatest weapon. Hughes rerouted what little shield power they had left, reinforcing the nose of the ship. Carter angled toward the dreadnought, full throttle. Durrell's eyes widened as he realized what they were doing. All units, stop them now. The blockade closed in. Fighters swarmed. The Varkolov itself repositioned for a killing blow. But it was too late. The gunship hurtled forward, a streak of defiance against the void. Reynolds eliminated 2 more interceptors, clearing the way. Hughes disabled targeting locks with a last-second systems overload. Carter adjusted course by a fraction, skimming past the dreadnought's shields by mere meters. The enemy hesitated. They wouldn't risk hitting their own capital ship. That moment of hesitation was all the squad needed. The Phantom activated the emergency hyperdrive, locking onto the slimmest gap in the blockade. Hughes rerouted power one last time. The gunship vanished into the abyss. Durrell stared at the empty space where they had been. His fury burned deep, but beneath it, something colder settled inside him. A realization. This wasn't the last time he would see them. Inside the gunship, silence settled over the crew. The tension still clung to them, battle instincts refusing to fade. But they had done it. They had escaped. Reynolds exhaled, setting his rifle aside. That was close. Carter chuckled, shaking his head. I still can't believe we pulled that off. Hughes leaned back, exhausted but satisfied. They'll never let this go. Cole turned to the Phantom. You knew. She met his gaze, calm and unshaken. The Empire thinks in rules. We don't. No one disagreed. The Death Squad had just humiliated the most powerful force in the galaxy. And now, the Empire would learn a new truth. They weren't fighting soldiers. They were fighting ghosts.